For Lesson 8, we are talking about sufficiency of evidence. So yesterday we talked about evaluating the reasoning, and now today we're talking about if you have enough evidence to prove your claim, okay? So remember, evidence is information that you gather, such as facts or details, and you have to research to get your information, guys. You can't just use what you know. You can't go to your parent and say, oh, can you tell me about this? Or anything like that. It has to come from research, facts, statistics, data, charts, graphs, studies that have been done, experts in the field. You have to have evidence, okay? Evidence supports a claim and its reasons. So you're coming up with a reason for whatever side of the argument you're on, right? And then you have to support that with evidence, and the evidence has to prove your side or of the argument, right? It has to support that side of the argument. It has to be relevant, and you have to have enough of it. It has to be sufficient, okay? Relevant means that it's directly related to your claim, and sufficient is when enough is provided to fully support that claim. So it has to have both of those pieces on there. So let's go ahead and watch a short video on analyzing the argument. This is part 2 of the video that we watched yesterday.
The previous video was about understanding how an argument is built so we can read it critically and see if the argument is logical. Make sure you watch that video first. Now, one way to analyze the argument is to look closely at the evidence the writer presents and ask if it is relevant and sufficient. So stick around and let's talk about evaluating the evidence. Hi, welcome to Snap Language. Mark Franco here. So, to build an argument, we present a series of claims that lead to a conclusion. Of course, the premises in the argument must support the conclusion in a way that makes sense. Of course. You'd be surprised, though. Even an argument that appears to make sense may not be really strong. It may not even be a valid argument. Let's look at a fairly obvious example first. X-Town is a great place to live. It has many parks and recreation areas where you can relax and exercise. Its parks have vast green areas including trees and wildflowers. The X-Town Public Library was founded in 1841, making it one of the oldest libraries in the area. In this simple paragraph, the topic is X-Town. The point the author wants to make is that X-Town is a great place to live. The author presented 3 premises to support this conclusion. Now, looking at each premise closely, the first is that X-Town has many parks and recreation areas. That's actually good evidence. Most people would agree that this makes any town a good place to live. The next premise is that the parks are green and beautiful. Well, that's more information about the parks still. What else is there? The final premise is that X-Town has an old library. Oh, that's great, but the conclusion is that it's a great place to live. Having an old library is interesting, but it's not quite relevant to that conclusion. That's not very closely related to the claim. It doesn't provide adequate support. So pretty parks is good evidence. An old library, not so much. Is that all? Typically, when you think of a good place to live, you think of safety, good jobs and schools, shops and restaurants, good transportation, and so forth. The author here said nice things about X-Town, but one relevant piece of evidence isn't quite enough to support a conclusion. X-Town is a very safe place to live. Take a quick stroll around town and you will likely run into friendly and helpful people. A study showed a 60% decrease in robberies and burglaries in recent years. No violent crimes were reported last year. What's the point or the conclusion here? Does the author present sufficient evidence to support that conclusion? Is the evidence relevant to the conclusion? Pause the video and see if you can answer these questions. Did you pause the video? The main point here is that X-Town is a safe place to live. Starting from the bottom here, No one reported any violent crimes last year. Yes, that's relevant to being a safe place. But what about previous years? Maybe last year was different somehow? The writer also mentioned no violent crimes. How about other types of crimes? But overall, no violent crime could mean it's a safe place, so let's say it's okay evidence for now. Besides, we must consider all the evidence, so let's continue. There was a 60% reduction in crimes. That sounds good. Well, that's 60% of what number? If there were, say, 1,000 crimes before, 60% fewer than 1,000 is still a lot of crimes. A writer often includes a study and statistics or data because they provide strong support to a claim, and readers tend to believe this type of information. As critical readers, we know sometimes it only sounds good. We still need to ask questions to see if any piece of information truly supports the main point, regardless where the information comes from. Finally, you'll run into a lot of friendly, helpful people in X-Down. The point is that it's a safe place, not how nice the people are. As you can see, even when it appears there's good information to support a conclusion, you should always evaluate the evidence. Did the author present sufficient information? Is all the information good and relevant to the conclusion? In this paragraph, not so much. I'm not saying you should never believe anything you read. If we trust the source, it's very likely the writer will do their best to support their claims and provide sufficient and relevant information. But we don't want to learn something that's not very accurate, right? We don't want people to persuade us to believe something unless they give us very good reasons to do so. So we should always read critically, always make sure conclusions are logical and accurate, and supported by sufficient and relevant information. Is that all? Yes, pretty much. So next time you read something, look closely. I often put extra information in the description box below a video, so take a look. There are more things you can do to read critically, but that's all for this video. What do you do to read critically? Maybe you do something I didn't mention here, so put it in the comments. For now, click that like button and subscribe to Snap Language on YouTube. And read critically. Use those critical eyes. Yeah. Bye.
So remember just to make sure that you are providing enough evidence and then it's relevant to the statement that you're making or the claim that you have or whatever your reasoning is for that particular slide, okay? And just, again, make sure that you're citing your sources. Remember, this evidence is coming from somewhere. You have to tell your audience where you got that evidence. And that includes if you're including a graphic like an illustration, a photo, a graph, a chart, you have to have photo credits for those. Okay, so where did you get them from, or cite your source of where you got those from. So make sure you check out the videos on how to put in photo credits as well. All right, guys, have fun with this project.